Anton Mauve was one of the most famous painters of the Dutch Hague School. The Hague School was a group of artists in the late 1800s who strove to paint realistic rural landscapes using gray, muted palettes. Because of this, sometimes they're referred to as the Gray School. Using their gray-toned palette, they also tried to capture the moment in the scene by painting en plein air, or on location when they were able. The group was influenced by the artists of the Dutch Golden Age, like Hals, Rembrandt, and Cuyp, and the recent Barbizon painters in France, Millet, Corot, and Rousseau, for example. Colors are earthy, some say somber, and the scenes are quiet. One of my favorite paintings by Mauve is this one. Mauve captures something here that really draws me in. It's so authentic and raw. You feel like you're there, and you can sense the cold. If we zoom in, you can see the quickness of his strokes, and to me, the rapidity tells me that he was working from feeling in the moment. Did he paint it on location? Was he in the snow? It feels like it, but I can't determine that. The sheep are hardly depicted, but yet you know what they are, maybe because of the entire scene or the way they herd together. The shepherd, of course, helps fill in the story. The sheep create a large center object, and he put a large dark spot right in the middle, perhaps to balance out the dark values of the shepherd, or simply to ground that mass visually. Then we notice this dark shape on the left. I'm guessing that was meant to balance the other two dark shapes. It also helps lead the eye into the scene and provides visual interest. We'll discuss that some more in a minute, but first, let's zoom in on the sheep. Notice how the sheep are implied, just through some simple, quick lines. You can tell that they were painted quickly, and most of them imply an arc. Even the light marks, they sweep in the same direction. Now, if we move over here, you notice on the horizon that you have these areas here. Again, brief sweeps of the brush. In this case, I think they imply distant trees, and it's done so subtly and beautifully. You don't even think about them, but they help set the scene. Now let's go back to the dark branch. It's such a strong value contrast that we know it was intentional. To understand its importance, let's back up and then take it out. Do you see how your focus changes? You stay in the middle, but it feels less balanced and less visually interesting. Now, you may not have noticed, but there are two other lines more softly implied. They also lead off the scene. What if we dropped all three lines? Well, you still look at the center object, don't you? But it's just not as pleasing. Those lines help tell the story and keep your eyes in the scene. Mauve was so gifted at painting. Many of his paintings featuring livestock are set in warmer months, and in fact several of his paintings feature cows and have a strong resemblance to Cuyp, another artist whose work I love. Notice the similarities and the differences, the color vibrance, the realism. Cuyp painted in the mid-1600s, and although not the first to paint cows, he was the first to paint them with such sensitivity. Art tends to build upon the past. As it develops, artists push boundaries and explore new concepts, bringing us to the mid to late 1800s where we find Mauve and his pleasant scenes of rural life. But I go back to this snow scene. I just love it when a painting places me in the scene and I feel it. Notice that the snow isn't white. It's dirty and shadowed. The birds flying in the distance and the threatening sky, to me, make it feel very desolate. But at the same time, it's peaceful and quiet, like a snowy day. Interestingly, Mauve had a major impact on his wife's cousin, Vincent van Gogh. who studied with Mauve to learn the art of painting in 1881 to 1882. Prior to this time, Van Gogh had only drawn. He writes to his brother Theo, quote, "Well, Mauve immediately installed me in front of a still life containing a couple of old clogs and other objects, and so I could set to work." This was his first painting. Mauve responded, "I always thought you were a bloody bore, but now I see that isn't so." For Van Gogh, this is when his painting career began.